I did these slides after I picked my kids up from school, and I got 2 of the 3 topics done. So we'll push the third topic to Friday. I do in evenings on Mondays, Fridays in the middle of the day. I know some people are emergency workers or work shift jobs or whatever the case may be. So we always try to have one live in the middle of the day in case you want to view the live, and then one in at night. Most of us at night, you're getting off from games and practice, etc. So this is our best time. Um, but these two came straight directly from app members. First one we're going to talk about is around the subject of bluegill, how to catch bass on bluegill from Kenny. And then the second one's from Caleb Kelly, talking about how to be more competitive in tournaments, which, speaking of, we are going to have a tournament fishing workshop in June. It's going to be 5 days in a row of live, and it's going to be all centered around competition. Nothing but about competition, how to be a better tournament fisherman. So look forward to that. One more housekeeping thing before we get into the lesson tonight. We're going to run a tournament this month inside of the app. So you guys, we've done straight up fishing classes in the past, but now we're going to start using the app to do it. And so if you look at the bottom of the app, you see it says Bass Challenge. We're going to have the Straight Up Fishing Bass Challenge. And how this is going to work is we're just going to award, just like we did at the retreat this year, the biggest spotted bass, biggest smallmouth, biggest largemouth for a week-long tournament. We're going to go from, I think it's Saturday until Sunday. The reason I'm doing Saturday to Sunday is to give everybody 2 days, like 2 weekends that you can fish. Because I know not everybody gets to fish through the weekends, especially if you got kids. So I get it. So week-long tournament. Going to give away prizes and gifts from Shop BLAT, and fun tournament. It just doesn't cost you anything. If you're in the app, you can be a part of it. Simple as that. Sound good? See how this goes. If it goes really good, we'll do one every month. Big bass tournament. Maybe we'll change it up. Maybe we'll change it up to different species. Maybe we'll change it up to different formats. But right now, it's just the biggest bass. You're going to start a thread in the app under Bass Challenge. And all the rules, you can click on that Bass Challenge. There's a landing page there. It's got all the rules. How do you submit photos? How you be part of that tournament? Y'all ready to get into? Let's get into the actual lesson tonight. So it came from Kim Pfeiffer. You can see what it says is how do you target bass during the bluegill spawn? All right, I like this question because in some areas of the country we're already dealing with this, and it's something that you should have in your toolbox to know and recognize when it's happening and how to attack, how to take advantage of this if you happen to see it. Michael, we can go ahead and get into those slides here. So this is what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about 2 things. We're going to talk about Bream tonight. We're going to talk about tournament fishing. This first one's on the Bream. What I want to cover in this is where can you find Bream? Just about, I haven't been to a lake yet that doesn't have brim or bluegill, some type of pinfish that the fish are feeding on. So we're going to talk about where do you find those. Secondly, we're going to talk about what lures you should use if you want to target this. So this is the fun part. That's the part that everybody loves to talk about because I give you something to buy. And then lastly, we're going to talk about the time of the year that you especially if you're new to this, the time of the year that you want to focus on the brim spawn. Okay? All right. So that's what we're going to cover. Let's go. Let's keep rocking on, Mike. So point number 1. If you're going to try to catch bass during the brim spawn, you probably need to know where you can find them at. If you don't know where they're at and you don't understand, what is that saying? They say to catch the mouse, you gotta study the mouse or study the, I don't know, something like that. It's some kind of saying, right? Some kind of cliche term. Well, if you want to be able to catch bass on Bream, it's a good idea to start studying the Bream, his life cycle, where he lives, what he likes to eat, all the things. Now, let me throw in a little personal story about this. This actually happened by accident for me. I'll be as brief as I can because this ain't gonna help you, but I won't talk about it. All right. Y'all gave me the mic. You tune into the live. You tuned into the live tonight. I started brim fishing 2 years ago by accident. Let me explain. Z-Man was coming out with their panfish series of soft plastics. I think it's micro finesse, something like that they call it. And I started brim fishing. They gave me a pack of them. I started brim fishing, took my kids out. We went on a little vacation in Lake Norman, and we started throwing these little jigs around to catch. We really was trying to catch crappie. We ended up catching brim. Then we started fishing dock lights at night. And we started catching brim and hybrids and all kind of stuff on dock lights at night. Dude, I got so obsessed with this, fishing 4-pound test line and catching these brim on these little micro finesse lures. It opened my eyes even more. Keep in mind, I fished all my life, but I never really intentionally targeted brim. But when they gave me those lures and I started looking for them, I learned a lot about the brim. And I can't tell you how many times I was reeling in a brim and a bass came up and ate it. And they're always good ones. Always good ones. It takes a pretty big bass to try to attack a brim. Always big ones. And so many times I've been reeling one in and then the bass come up and get the brim. So I learned a lot about the life cycle. I learned what to look for, bottom compositions that brim like, because I fish for the brim. Y'all know, and especially when we get to the summertime for my southern people, what do I always encourage? And I will start preaching it again in July and August when fishing absolutely sucks. For all my people up north, I know your fishing is good in July and August, but for us down here, down south, it sucks July and August, even September. And I always tell y'all, start fishing for other species. Start fishing for other species. Go get you some crappie jigs. Go night fishing. Fish for striper. Go catfishing. Do anything else. This is why. This is the whole reason why. Because if you start fishing for brim and you start understanding their life cycle, when they spawn, where they live, what kind of bottom they look like, what they even look like, then it opens your eyes to how you can catch bass. All things fishing help your bass fishing. I don't care what it is. So, where you can find brim, number one, they can be found just by sight. You can pretty much, in most fisheries, brim will spawn shallow enough for you to be able to visually see them. And I should have attached a picture of what brim beds look like, and I didn't. I'm sorry. Brim beds are very, very obvious to see. Somebody, y'all can put it in the chat to kind of help everybody else out. Brim beds will often look like these round, like perfectly round circles on the bottom, and they'll be lined up perfectly. Like just, it's crazy how perfect Mother Nature can make something on the bottom like that. Just it'll look like somebody took an auger and just drilled into the bottom of the lake. That perfect, in perfect rows. It's gonna stand out very obvious when you can see it. So you can find them by sight. When I say brim could be number one on the slide, brim can be found by sight stalking. I'm just talking about you can get on your trolling motor right around the bank and you can find brim beds that way. I did that for 2 summers in a row. Absolutely obsessed with that. Yeah, there they are right there. So Michael's got you see how perfectly round and symmetrical those beds. That's what brim beds look like. They're always they're not always super shallow, but the ones that you can see are going to be really shallow. You'd be surprised how shallow they can get. That's what they'll look like right there. Thank you, Michael, for pulling that up. That's perfect thing. You can put that over me. You can use your electronics to find them. In some lakes, they're going to be muddy, tannic water. You won't be able to easily visually see the brim beds. So you can use your side scan on your electronics. Most electronics nowadays has side scan. And it's going to look exactly like what Michael showed you in that image on your side scan. It'll look exactly like that. You use your scout mode on forward-facing sonar. I know Ray Brunetti went out with Paul Geddes and I. We did. I can't remember if we found any brim beds that day, but we definitely saw fish on scout mode. With using our forward-facing sonar, so you can use that too. Typically, this is you gotta take this part right here. This is a general. I guess a general. What am I trying to say? I don't say a general synopsis. Most of the time, they're gonna be 6 foot or less, and water that you can stand in or less. most of the time. Unless the lake's really, really clear, you might find brim beds, 8, 10, 12 foot. But most of the time, they're going to be in water that you can stand in. Just because it's 4, 5, 6 foot, I mean, you always be able to see with your visual eye. Sometimes you have to use your electronics. Um, and a good place for you to start is just near the shore. And we'll talk about why near the shore is important. They're typically going to be near the shore. In Florida, so for my guys that live in Florida that's here in the app, in Florida, brim beds can look a little different. You always hear people talk about shell beds in Florida. The shell beds, how you can identify them is the brim spawn on the shell, the hard spots. So if you're using your side scan and you start to see brim beds, that's also shell beds. And where the shell beds are, they're always where there's current. The current keeps the bottom clean. It can be where boats run through and keep the bottom clean. The brim will spawn on that. That's how you point out shell beds. But for most of us in reservoirs and rivers, the brim beds are going to be shallow and near the shore. You can also find brim around docks. And the reason they're going to be around docks has a lot to do with night lights. Now, let's think about why that would be important. So this is kind of sneaky stuff that you really got to think about. This is why I tell y'all to fish for other species. The dock lights. What do lights attract at night? I want you to really think about this. Why do you typically find brim beds around docks? Do they just like people and they want to be around people? No, there's usually some type of light around the dock, even if it's a house light. And you know that house lights at night attract bugs. What do brim eat? They eat bugs. See how you start to think this is nothing but the lake breakdown process. That's why the lake breakdown process that we talk about here in the app is so important. You find the food, figure out what they're eating. It's just nature. That's how nature works in general. You want to find birds? Find what birds eat. You'll find the birds. You want to find cows? Find pastures. There'll be cows. Sounds so simple. It's almost insulting for me to say this. It feels like I'm insulting your intelligence, but it's just nature. But the problem is, when you take a 60,000 acre lake, a 30,000 acre lake, a big lake, and you got 4 hours of fish, sometimes it can feel intimidating. And then plus fish, cows, I can see them. Birds, I can see them. I can't see fish. They're covered in water. So it's intimidating. But the dock lights bring in bugs. Bugs bring in the brim and bluegill. Shaded banks. Again, when you have shaded banks, that means if you have shade, what do you have close by? Trees. Where do a lot of bugs live? Trees. The bugs fall in the water. The bugs get eaten by bluegill. Very, very logical thinking. This is a good way. And like these 6 things that I just listed, I hope they're really 6. Yes, 6 things I just listed. It's not limited to those 6 things, but these are great places for you to start if you want to get into this and expand from there. Everything that I tell you here in the app is just a good starting point for you to get the ball rolling and start to learn how to take it from there. All right, Mike, let's jump to this next slide. Okay. Now, the time of year you should be thinking about this. So let's get this out of the way first. Bass eat brim all year long. There's no time of the year where there's not like wintertime they don't eat bluegill or brim. But I think for us as anglers, it makes most sense for us to target the brim in the time that I listed here. Actually, let's jump down to the bottom. I want you to read this with me. So bluegill spawning season typically occurs from late spring through midsummer, whatever that is for you. You can see I got there in parentheses, it says May to August. Depending on where you live, that'll look a little bit different. If you live in Florida, it's like it don't ever stop. They're always on brim. If you live in Tennessee and Georgia, in that central part of the United States, it's probably like what we say here, May to August. Um, this also peaks when water temperatures reach 65 to 80 degrees. Water's probably about 80 degrees here where I live. While May and June are the prime month, bluegills can spawn multiple times a season. Bluegill can spawn multiple times a season. So if you've already seen some bluegill spawning, like they're gonna keep doing that. This part I disagree with, but I found it on Google, so let's just put it on there. Often on full moons. Bull crap. I've seen it with no moons, half moons, quarter moons, blue moons. I don't know, all the moons that you can think about. Blue moons, red moons, eclipse moons. I don't see bluegill spawn. It's not dependent on the moon. It's dependent more on just a lot of factors. One is actually rainfall. Water clarity has a lot to do with it. So it's kind of like waterfall, water levels, um, just overall weather patterns, hot, cold, etc. We've had a lot of cold fronts. I was in Tennessee just this last week. Mornings in the 40s, highs in the 60s. It's pretty cool for May. So you'll see that progress long and further into the season, the bluegill spawn. And this says that they may continue spawning as late as October. Now, I think for us as anglers, it's best for us to think, especially if you're new to this, look for the bluegill spawn like May all the way through the summer. Here's why. During those periods, the bluegill are spawning, and that's when they're most vulnerable to bass. The bass will eat them all year long. I've caught fish really deep before, and they had bluegill in their mouth. The bass will eat bluegill they'll eat anything that gets in their way at any point. Think about it, they're eating your baits, and your baits are made out of metal and like rubber and stuff, plastic. So a bass will eat anything that's in his way and this that he feels has opportunity to take advantage of. However, the most bluegill are in the areas where the most bass are from early fall from early summer to early fall, May to August, where I live in this area of the country, within 200 to 300 miles a year. Number two, bass still eat brim all year. And the time to target this bite, I feel like is best anytime the brim are actually spawning. I think is best. How are you going to find out that they're spawning? You're going to look for them, side scan or visually. All right, Mike, we can jump to the second, this third, whatever number we're on. Next slide. Okay, so this is y'all's favorite part. This is the part everybody loves. I found the brim beds, Brian. What do I need to tile on? You can see I got 10 things here, and I honestly feel like these 10 things, I could come up with 10 more things. So I put lures on here because I know that's what that gives you. Sometimes giving you a lure helps you visualize how you can do this. But keep in mind, these lures have a lot to do with how you're going to target the brim spawn. Okay, so let me give you an example. So I talked about Florida and how the brim spawn on shell beds in like 8 foot, 6 foot, 8, 10 foot of water. Okay, so if they're on shell beds in the middle of Toho, a prop bait's not going to be the best bait to fish for those fish. Maybe a crankbait, even a Carolina rig, with some other stuff that I got in here. I didn't even put some of this. This is my point. If I was in Florida, it would probably be dragging a Carolina rig, a football jig. They bite those big swim baits and glides too on the shell beds that time of the year. So if I was fishing Lake Hartwell and I'm fishing around floating docks, it would probably be the hollow belly frog, a popper, and a prop bait. So these baits are going to depend on what type of fishery you fish in. You have a grass fishery up north in Minnesota, Wisconsin, that area. Your brim beds are probably going to be around grass. The hollow spots and holes in the grass is where the brim are going to spawn. A chatterbait would probably be best. Maybe even a crankbait, a swim jig. So your lure choice is going to depend on how you're targeting the brim spawn and where they live. A swim jig on Lake Hartwell would not be the best option. I'm not saying you wouldn't catch one on it, would not be the best option given clear water, no grass, and it's just open water fishing. It wouldn't be the best, wouldn't be your best lure option. However, the frog, very good. Clear water, visual strikes, top water. They like that. Spinner bait wouldn't be the best option. But if I live where Mactoon lives, where there's cypress trees and tannic water, dark water, swamp lakes, spinner bait might be a good option. A chatterbait would be a really good option. I could skip it under the trees. I can get it close to the cypress trees. It's dark water. I got vibration. I'm moving more water. The chatterbait would be a good option in that scenario. Where I didn't even put on here, like I didn't put wacky rig. A wacky rig is awesome during the brim spawn. Bluegill spawn, the wacky rig is probably the best one. Honestly, I didn't even put it on here. And that's what I mean. I can come up with 20 more different ways. But you don't want to think about the bait first. Think about where you're trying to put the bait, and it gives you what bait you should be using. When you think about where the brim are and where you need to put your bait, that gives you information and data on which bait to use. If I need to put my bait under a cypress tree, let's see which one of them would probably be a terrible bait. Actually, a crankbait probably wouldn't be the best one. Can I get a crankbait under a cypress tree? Yes, it's aggravating, and at times that might be a good situation because nobody's putting a crankbait under a cypress tree. That's not going to be my best one. However, if I'm fishing a massive grass flat with hydrilla, a crankbait would be a really good bait to throw. So think about it that way. So number one, swim jigs are great. If you got a grass situation, I think swim jigs are great for the bluegill spawn. Poppers are great. If you fish anywhere where there's current or they're in really shallow water, poppers work really good. Hollow belly frog is really good. Doesn't matter if you have grass or not. If you're fishing around lily pads, for sure. If you're fishing around any type of matted out vegetation, for sure. However, do not be afraid to use the hollow belly frog in open water situations. By open water, I mean no grass. That can mean around docks. That can mean just around a lay down, a log in the water, shade provided by a dock or overhanging branches, undercut banks. A frog is a really, really good open water bait to use because of where you can put it. Crankbaits are always good. And listen, any of these baits, I haven't even looked at the chat yet, but any of these baits could, they don't have to be bluegill colored. They don't have to be. They don't have to be like green pumpkin and purple and brown. They don't have to be. It could be, and 100% could be, but it doesn't have to be. It could be. Crankbaits, spinner baits, chatterbaits are really good. Swim baits are really good, and the swim baits don't have to be a bluegill profile swim bait. I'm saying it again. These baits don't have to be brim colored, and they don't have to be bluegill pattern baits. Because you're fishing the bluegill spawn doesn't mean that you have to match that hatch. It's so contrary to everything you probably will ever read and see or watch on YouTube. I'm telling you, they don't have to be that. Because you remember, our colors and our profiles are about attention more than they are matching the hatch. Matching the hatch is a great marketing scheme. It's very, very great. It's a good way of us helping make sense of why bass are biting our lures. That concept helps us. It gives us a visual of why. It gives us an understanding of why bass are biting the lure. However, the bass isn't processing that information like that. The bass don't process anything. It's in my way. Let me bite it. Let me get it out of here. He's an animal. Think about your dog. Does your dog care what color his chew toy is? I mean, maybe somebody probably says their dog does. Your dog's not that smart, bro. He's a dog. You could buy a dog. It's going to offend my dog people. I know I got a lot of them, but you can buy a dog. That's how smart he is. Like you could buy one. But they're not processing it like that. They see that prop bait as a chew toy. I want to go chew it. Period. Prop baits are great. The reason prop baits are good in the brim spawn, you can keep them in place a lot. He stays there, stays there. You can keep them in a short strike zone for a long time. When you're fishing shade, when you're fishing underhanging banks, you're fishing docks, the strike zone is very short. Sometimes it'll be 2, 3 foot. What I mean by that, where the bass is going to get your lure, if he gets it, is in a very tight space. That's why wacky rig is good. You put the wacky rig in a space, and he's like the bait stays in that one space a long time. I throw it when I flip a Texas rig, it goes in bloop straight to the bottom. It's through the strike zone pretty fast. These baits stay in that strike zone. It floats. You work it. It floats. It stays in the strike zone a long time. That's why it's good. Beaver baits are good. Beaver baits are really good just because the profile is kind of brimish. And then stick baits. That's what I was talking about when I mentioned stick baits. That's why we're talking about wacky rigs, etc. All right. So let's see. I'll answer a few questions about this, and then we'll jump on to the competition side. Let's see. I'll see. Let's go. I can go through. You see any questions, Mike? I see some conversation here.
It's mostly conversation. Kale Williams did ask if you have algae scum, do you still fish through the grass, or is it too much time throwing the muck off your lure?
Oh, so we're dealing with that a lot here. Almost all your lakes. So I did a little lesson on this earlier. He's asking about scum in our lakes right now. So let's just understand why we got that. The reason you have scum in your lakes right now is because we've had a really dry season, which means the water is clear in a lot of our fisheries. You have clear water that allows plants to photosynthesize. One thing that plants need to grow is sunlight. That's how they produce food for themselves. Well, aquatic vegetation is the same way. Since we've got clear water, there's more light penetrating the water column, allowing this muck to grow on the bottom. The seeds for this were there all along, but it never could germinate because it never had enough sun. Well, now it does. You got a lot of muck. So that slime is telling you a story about the bottom a lot of times. It can only grow on a substrate that is fertile. Fertile meaning soft, something like you would want in your yard for grass. So for this bluegill spawn, the thing that we're dealing with now, bluegill typically don't want to spawn on anything too soft. I'm not saying they won't, but they probably won't. They like a little bit more sandy, harder bottom, rockier, sandier. That's why they spawn on the shell beds like we talked about. So if you're seeing that or experiencing that slime, it's probably a good indication just to keep moving. Now, to answer your question on how you deal with that, I've been just picking through it all year. You can use a few baits to help you with that. You can use like instead of using the shaky head, you can use a drop shot. You can use a Carolina rig. Carolina rig still kind of snots up really bad. You can use a bait that doesn't go to the bottom. So use a floating worm or use a worm that'll stay suspended in the water column, a wacky rig, a Nico or something. Which Nico, you really still fish on the bottom. But just use something like that that doesn't foul up nearly as much. That'll help you with that. But it's also remember that's telling you a story about the bottom that you're fishing. Let's see. Any other questions on bluegill?
Okay.
With bluegill.
Does the
Yeah, let's.
size of your bait matter with the bluegill beds?
Yeah, that's a great question, Davis. So, Davis is asking the question about upsizing your, or not upsizing, but just about the size of your bait. So okay, I want to say upsizing is better during the post spawn, which you typically when we're talking about bluegill and the bluegill spawn and bass, typically that is post spawn related. And anytime during the post spawn, I do like to upsize my baits. I do like bigger baits. I will throw. I don't throw a lot of bigger. I don't throw any giant baits, but there's times when I throw bigger baits. And now is the time of the year where I'll throw bigger crankbaits. I'll throw bigger worms. I'll throw uh, bigger swim baits, heavier stuff, big top waters because it's post spawn. They want high protein diet. It's just like you after you done worked all day. Well, for a bass, work is spawning. You know how on Friday night after you worked all week, you want a big steak. You don't want a 6 ounce sirloin. I want steak. And bro, give me shrimp on the side. Bring it out back. You know what I'm saying? You won't. It's the same way. They don't go. They don't have a job, but their job is to survive during the spawn, and so they will eat bigger stuff this time of the year. I would say if you want to learn bigger baits, now the next three in my area of the country, next 3 4 weeks is your time to learn big baits. You want to get some confidence in bigger baits. Now is the time to do it during this period, whenever it happens for you. Big top waters, big frogs, big worms, big any of that. It's the time to upsize it.
You want another one?
Yeah, absolutely. I want all of them.
All right.
So you see this one from Luis. Uh, Luis says, "What about using something like a buzzgill as a trailer on a sea rig?" I'm not sure what a buzzgill is, but Carolina rig is another good, it's another good technique to use, especially like on shell beds. Buzzgill, I would imagine, is some type of gill
Sixth Sense.
profile. I'm not even familiar with it. Not familiar. I imagine it's some type of gill profile soft plastic is what I'm seeing in my brain just by the name. And I mean, yeah, try it. I stay simple, y'all. I stay simple, y'all. I preach it all the time. I don't do a lot of crazy. I don't, I don't do a lot of trendy things. I don't do a lot of trendy things. I just kind of learned over time that uh, there's a few trends that are stuck and that make sense and work, but the approach is what's going to be the magic. So more so than a new trendy bait is, do you understand the profile? I
That's
would
the
like
buzz
that
gill.
better on a swim jig. I would like that better on a swim jig or something like that than I would a Carolina rig. My God, I would. So the Gremlin, a brush hog. That's what I would be putting on my Carolina rig this time of the year. You remember what I said? You remember what I said when I was going through this? The profiles do not have to be brim profiles. The colors of the baits do not have to be brim colors just because you're fishing the bluegill spawn. Let me say that again. Listen to me. When you're fishing the bluegill spawn, and I know this is messing with your brain. This is like, no, it's the bluegill spawn. It's gotta be bluegill. I know it's messing with you. Nobody's saying that. You're stupid. I know you want to attack me when I say this. You fishing the bluegill spawn for bass is not reliant on you matching that hatch, the profile, or the color. This is about you understanding where brim live and looking for bass in those areas and using the best bait in that area to catch the bass. That's what it's about. That is more important than the color and the profile. I'm gonna say it one more time. You fishing, and this goes for everything. This goes for the herring spawn. Somebody asked about the herring spawn. We need to do one on that. I don't care if you're fishing herring spawn, shad spawn. I don't care whatever it is. Those things can be important, but the most important thing that you need to understand is how that forage fish behaves in its environment. Matching the profile won't do. If you go out and buy a bunch of brim stuff tonight and go fishing and fish just the way you were for the last 4 months, you won't. It won't make a difference. You going out and buying a bunch of gill looking profile baits and then going, it will not do anything for you. If you understand what brim beds look like and you spend half a day this Saturday solely looking for brim beds, you're gonna get somewhere. You're gonna win. You're gonna win some tournaments very soon. That is what this is about. It ain't about them colors. You putting 3 strands of orange in your jig skirts And changing the trailer to some type of thing that looks like a brim is not going to make you a better bass fisherman during the brim spawn. It won't make a difference. The only thing that's going to make you a better fisherman during the brim spawn is you understanding the brim and how to approach them to catch bass. It's the only thing that's gonna make a difference. You buying colors, it ain't gonna make a difference. You buying a different, it ain't gonna make a difference. It will not make. You can go out there with a white crankbait and go catch some real bluegill spawn if you understand the bluegill spawn. I know it messes with your brain and it messes with everything, and I know, I get it. I promise you, I get it. But I'm telling you, that's not important enough. It's not important enough. It can matter. It can matter. It's just not important enough. It really isn't. First thing you need to do is understand the source. Okay. Barty says you love the bluegill. That bluegill colored spinnerbait is one of two colors I throw. I throw that bluegill spinnerbait. It's like green pumpkin and purple. I throw that one, Barty, and then I throw a white and chartreuse one. Those are the only two spinnerbaits I own. I change my blades out and stuff like that, but those are only two I own.
You see that question above? What weight on baits? No depth is a factor.
Yeah, I don't even see it. But what weight on baits? That's a question that you need to answer because there's no right or wrong answer to that. What size, what weights? I mean, I've got what bait are we talking about? What is the conditions? What are we fishing? What are we doing? Like, what are we doing? What are we talking about? We talking about Texas rigs? We talking about chatterbaits? What are we talking about here? So there's a lot more context there, but that's something that you're going to figure out as you fish. I want to teach y'all to let go of the thought process that you're going to show up to the lake with everything figured out. Let go of the thought process that you're going to show up to the ramp knowing what to throw and what sizes and what colors. Come to the ramp with questions. Approach the day with what is going to work today. You'll never get bored. When you have bad results and you come to it with questions, the bad results don't matter as much because you don't have any expectation. All you were showing up the lake was to figure it out. But when you show up to the lake with expectations, or when you show up to the lake trying to already have it figured out, you almost lose every time. I don't know what weight, what weight should you use. I don't know. Let's tie them on and let's see. Like seriously, let's see. What color should I be throwing? Let's go find out. Should I be fishing deep or shallow? Well, that's what our goal is today. Let's start that. As we start this tournament, starts Saturday coming. I think that's all right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Saturday.
When you go fishing for this tournament, let's start trying that. Let's start thinking more about the environment and how things are working and how fish. Let's look into fish behavior and then show up to the lake looking to fill in blanks instead of showing up to the lake with the blanks filled. Instead of showing up to the lake and say it's 85 degrees, the bluegill should be spawning. Let's show up to the lake. I wonder if the bluegill are spawning. Let me go look for them. You never lose that way because if you don't find any bluegill, you know the bluegill aren't spawning. You leave that alone. If you find the bluegill, then the bluegill are spawning, and now I got something to do. Like let's move towards that thought process moving forward. Okay. I think did we got most of the questions right?
Yeah, I've got one more. When you fish a beaver bait and flipper pitch, whatever you want to call it, do you peg the weight?
Oh, that's a good question. Pegging the weight or leaving it, let it slip. When I fish grass, I peg my weight. When I'm not fishing grass, I do not peg my weight. So I like for my weight to separate from my bait if possible, especially when flipping wood. Um, I want to have a good, educated, make me sound smart reason why. And some of the things I've been taught to say I've found out are false. But I don't like to pick my weight if possible. I do like the weight to separate when I'm fighting a fish because if the weight is compact, it just makes it easier for them to throw the bait, especially with heavier weights like half ounce, 3/4 or more. I want that weight to separate from the bait. But I do like for it to separate when I'm fishing wood, but in grass, it doesn't work. That's been my philosophy. Doesn't mean that's the gospel and you need to do it that way. All right. Let's go over to let's start talking about competition. So this one was from Caleb Kelly, and I'm not gonna read this whole post, but this is a good topic for us to talk about. And I thought about this for I don't know for a while, for a couple of days now, how to answer this. And so I know what I wanted to say, but I couldn't think of how to say it the right way. And I think I know at least a little bit of it now. So Caleb Kelly, he says, "What could I be doing better? It seems every year I start out hot, catching good fish in pre-spawn and spawn. He gives us a couple lures, and then it changes drastically. I struggle to catch competitive bags for months. That's enough right there. He says he struggles to catch competitive bags for months. Talks about a flat that he found, an area that he fished, and I guess it didn't petered out in his tournament. So, what I want to talk about next is how to catch bigger bass in tournaments. What I want to cover in this part is just the mental game of competitive fishing. I want to talk about quantity versus quality, and then analyzing our practice. The data is basically our practice. Basically, and what we're really going to get into is our lake breakdown process. Is really what it's going to be. All right, we can go jump into it, Mike.
Give me just a second.
Yeah, all good.
There we go.
So, how to catch bigger tournament bass? Uh, in my opinion, this has a lot to do with your mental approach to just fishing in general. My opinion. Um, the reason I struggle with trying to answer this question, well, if we all could catch bigger bass, wouldn't we just go catch bigger bass? Wouldn't we all just, if we know the answer to this question, why wouldn't we just go out? Everybody just go out and be competitive. Yeah, just go out and be competitive then, if that's what you got to do. If you got the answer to this question, so my how I want to answer this question is looking back on days that I call successful, and then ex- sharing with you what my thought process was, sharing with you how I arrived to those successful days. Because if I truly knew the answer to this, if I truly had the code to it for every trip, what I would just go do that. But that ain't what this sport is. That ain't how it works, unfortunately. But we can definitely up our percentages. So first thing I want to do, there was some language in Caleb's post that I want to kind of pick apart. I struggle to catch competitive bags. Okay. What is competitive bags for you? These are all questions I want you to. You can throw. I'll please throw these in the chat if you're watching the live. Like throw these in the chat right now. Like because I think the more we hear everybody's answers, the more clear we become on our own goals and targets. So get clear on what competitive, quote unquote, competitive looks like for you specifically. And I'll share what it looks like for me. Um, a good tournament for me is when I go out and practice. I find a bite, a pattern, an area, a place, a spot. I can go back in the tournament and either catch those fish or adjust to catch to find fish in the tournament. That is a competitive tournament for me. That is a successful day of fishing for me. When I have practice for my 2 days, I figure something out, I go back in the competition, and I can catch those fish. That's all I'm asking for. Where that puts me in the standings is none of my business. Don't care. That ain't my job. I don't have any defense. I can't stop anybody else from catching fish. All I can control is what I catch. And when I catch what I found, that's all I ask for. I'll let the chips fall where they may. So figure out what that is for you. Yours might not be that. Yours might be that you win. Yours might be something else. I don't know what it is for you. Figure out what that is for you, and that's yours. But that's what it is for me. Let me know what yours is in the comments. I really do. I'm curious to hear what your idea of competitive or successful day of tournament fishing is. Number two, and I guess I kind of answered that is like, what would success look like for you? We're all talking about mental process. I know when I brought up this subject, y'all probably thought I was going to tell you to throw a glide bait, upsize your baits, fish for less bites and less quantity and more quality. You probably thought I was going to say something like that. Because that's all rah rah stuff. All rah rah stuff. Like this stuff that really matters. What does it look like to you? What kind of tournament would be successful for you? And then number three, who who is an example of what success looks like to you? Who's somebody that tournament fishes that you would like to? You should have a lot of respect for how they compete, and you go ask them questions. And it's not necessarily how did you catch those fish. You might go ask them questions. Sometimes just listening to them talk. Go to YouTube and just listen to them talk. If you can call, it might be somebody local. Just talk to them. You, Fishermen always tell they talk too much, and they'll eventually tell you exactly what they're doing and what they're thinking. But I want you to pay more attention to what they're thinking. Fishermen will tell you exactly what end of the lake they're fishing on if you listen to them talk long enough. If you listen to them talk long enough, they'll tell you exactly what they're fishing. If you listen to them talk long enough, sometimes you even have to ask questions. If you just hang around and just listen, they always end up spilling the beans. And so just listen to how they think and how they talk and how they're processing their tournament. Just how they're processing it. You might have thought the tournament was a pre-spawn tournament. Somehow they figured out this post-spawn deal. And it opened your eyes to, oh man, fish maybe spawn a lot earlier in the year than I realized. Or maybe it's vice versa. You fish a tournament in May on Lake Hartwell, and you're just sitting around listening, and the guy goes, I had a 2.5 pounder that I found on bed that I caught the last 5 minutes and that called up that last fish. You weren't even thinking that there was any fish on bed in the middle of May. Little bitty clues like that expose things that you might have missed. And so it opens your eyes to things that you could maybe do that you didn't know that you could do for a year at any given time. Um, it was something that happened just this past week. It's kind of funny. It was a conversation we were talking about, and I mentioned that I scratched my boat at the St. Lawrence River. The guy, this is a very well known pro, who won a lot of money. He goes, how'd you scratch your boat at St. Lawrence? I was like, well, I fish really shallow at the St. Lawrence. He's like, yeah, but where are you gonna scratch your boat? And then when he started talking, I was getting got, is what was happening. It's kind of that's a perfect example. Something as small as telling somebody that you scratched your boat, it digs deeper and you find out why did you scratch your boat? How did you scratch your boat there? It's because you fish shallow. I didn't even think to fish that shallow there. So you can learn these things from people. This guy's won 15 times more money than I have. You can learn these kind of things from anybody. Anybody. One of my favorite things to do is study club fishermen. weekend club fishermen or watch their tournament results, in particular like older gentlemen, because I know they fish very simple. And there's been times when the lake's fishing really tough, and they'll come in with like 14 to 16 pounds, which is a really good bag of fish where I live. And you're like, how do they do that? And it's like, they're not doing anything cool. They ain't doing nothing cool, especially that nobody else can do. And so it opens your eyes to it's not as hard as you really thought it was. So think of some people that have been successful around you and ask them questions or listen to them talk. That's what this app is for you to connect with those people. Then it didn't have to be me. There's plenty of people here fish tournaments. People in here. Actually, I know there's more people. There's people in here that fish tournaments more than I do. I really only fish 6 tournaments a year. Now those tournaments are long days and long weeks. With 6 tournaments, I'll have 40 days of fishing in just 6 tournaments. A lot of times, but there's people that fish tournaments every week in this app that would be more than glad to tell you things. So if you see them post a picture in the community section, hey, where'd you catch them on? How'd you find them? How'd you arrive at that? But that very thing that I'm talking about is what this next workshop that we're going to do in June, that's what it's going to be about. That's exactly what it's going to be. It's about tournament fishing. All right, let's jump to the next slide, Mike. Okay, how to catch bigger bass. Quantity versus quality. What's most important? Size or quantity? So everybody's going to tell you especially a 5-fish tournament like what most of all of us are fishing, it's often expressed as truth that you want size over quantity. That's a very misleading thought process. Of course, the guy with the biggest and the most weight wins the tournament, but that's only telling part of the story. What gives you the best chance at arriving at the biggest bag that you can catch? And the answer to that is number 2. You need both. You need numbers and you need quantity. And most of the time, for the majority of us, from a competitive standpoint, in order for you to arrive at quality, you need quantity. And so, Caleb, to answer your question, I can guarantee you when you get into those months where you start to struggle to be competitive in tournaments, I guarantee you if you study your bites that you got in your pre-spawn and spawn tournaments, your numbers, quantity that you got in those tournaments versus the quantity that you're getting when you get to June, July, and August, I guarantee you're catching less fish when you get to June, July, and August. Guarantee you, 100%. And if you can figure out a way to increase your quantity, you increase your odds of getting quality. You got to have both. And most of the time, to get to quality, you need to catch more bass. If being good in tournaments was as simple as tying on the glide, tying on the big jig, tying on the big bait, the big whatever you name the big corky. If it was as simple as that, all of us would do good. Most of the time we suck because we don't catch enough quantity. Case in point, just this past week, I just fished a tournament on Douglas Lake, Tennessee. First tournament I come back since I got hurt in February. We had a 2.5-hour fog delay on day 1. I go out and I get 6 bites and I lose 4 in a row. Come in with 2 fish. Okay. That was a perfect scenario where I didn't catch enough bass to get to what I needed. If I were catching 12, 13, 14 bites a day, I could have curbed that and easily been into the check range. But since I only got 6 bites, now you're 134. And I go out day 2, Everybody's weight kind of went down on day two. I caught maybe 12 fish, a decent bag for a day two event, right at 11 pounds. 11 pounds in that tournament for 2 days. I took 11 and a half a day to get paid. Could figure out how to get a dozen bites on day one and day two. Now you walk home with $10,000. Most of the time, it's a quantity issue and not a quality issue. I want to say 9 out of 10 times, from a competitive standpoint, you're not catching enough quantity. And you're going out and catching seven, eight, nine. I'm not talking about that. Like, if you can learn how to get 15 bites a day every time you go fishing, your odds of being competitive in almost every tournament is going to be really, really high. I'm not talking about 5, 12 inches. I'm talking about 12 to 15. Listen, and true competitors know what I'm talking about. 2 pound plus bass, which is what, a 15 inches, 16-inch bass. Figure out how to catch them 16 inches. I think that's about what size a 2 pounder is. Now, when you watch social media and YouTube, and even some people here in the app, they think 2 pounders are small. They are not small in competition standards. For most lakes, I feel like I can't go to St. Lawrence River and catch even threes, or maybe even not even fours. Caleb, I just know you personally here in the South. You live in Mississippi. I know. I guarantee you, 2.5s, threes are going to be really good, however many inches those are. But you figure out how to get more quantity, you're always going to increase your odds of catching quantity. That's it. If you increase your quantity, you're going to increase your odds of catching quality every single time. Okay, now look at that point number 3. Quantity often reveals how dialed in you are. Remember I told you on Douglas, I only had 6 bites on day 1? Not dialed in enough. Because there's people around me that definitely caught. They definitely did way better than I did. Wasn't dialed in enough. Wasn't dialed in enough. Mike, isn't there another slide? I got one more slide, right?
Yep, there
Yeah.
is.
That next one. And this is going to explain this part. Quantity reveals how dialed in you are. So don't try to use that scapegoat. I can catch a lot of fish. I just can't get the bigger ones. Nope. It's probably like 5 people in the country. That's truly the issue. Most of the time, we're not analyzing the data from the bites that we are getting good enough to get enough bites to get to quality. So most of the time, most of the anglers, if you're getting a few bites, you probably aren't far off. You just most likely you've analyzed your practice, or you analyze the bites from that day either partially or not effectively enough. I fall into that category oftentimes. You were close. You're in the right area of the lake, potentially even throwing the right baits. Sometimes it can be the difference between where you cast, a little deeper or a little shallower, a little slower, a little faster. Something like it can, like Davis was asking about the size sinker. It could be maybe you was just a little too heavy a sinker. Simple little things, getting dialed in onto nuance. Really thinking about not fighting the urge. Listen to this. Please listen to this. Fighting the urge to fish somewhere else while your body is somewhere else. Fighting the urge to fish somewhere else while your body is somewhere else. You're thinking about fishing over here in that creek while your body's over here in this creek. Fight that urge and focus right here where you are. I do it all the time. I bet if I go to that creek, they're in Allen Creek. I'm over here in Soap Creek. I bet if I get to Allen Creek, they'll be on that laydown that I caught that 3 pounder on last Tuesday. And I'm not even fishing. I'm not even paying attention to what's right in front of me. Fish more simple and smaller. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. I got ahead. Number 2, fish more simple and smaller. Okay. So y'all, oftentimes I hear people say this all the time. I kind of roll my eyes in the back of my head. I can catch all the fish I want, but I just can't catch the bigger ones. That's almost never the case, bro. I have never fished with anybody, and I fished quite a bit of coin before I had a boat. I have never fished with anybody that is just catching fish all day and didn't do well in a tournament. There's been a few times in my life where that's been the case, where I caught the dog snot out of them and didn't get a check, and almost all of them were up north. That's the only place you can do this. If you're north of Virginia, you get a pass on this statement. If you're south of Virginia, you don't get to say this. Virginia and south. It's very rare that you're gonna fish all day and just whack them and then not be competitive. It's very rare. Once a year, possibly that happens. This is not happening routinely. I know it ain't, and you're not gonna snow me over on this. And so what I'm saying about fish more simple and smaller, I'll give you an example. So one of my favorite places to fish in the country is the Potomac River and the James River. When I say fish simple and fish small, when I go to the Potomac, I go to Aquia Creek and I act like the rest of the river does not exist. And primarily some of my best tournaments and my best results has come from the Potomac River. I have never won there, but I've had a lot of really good days and a lot of really good tournaments at the Potomac River. I fish very small. I literally act like the rest of the Potomac River doesn't exist, and I just stay in a choir for 3 days practicing. And I fished the tournament 3 days in a choir. You know how much information I've gathered about Aquia Creek in 5 years of going to the Potomac River? Really longer than that. My first trip to Potomac was 2017. So nearly 10 years of going to the Potomac. I hadn't went there every year. When I fish small like that, I have bukus of very minuscule little things that I know about Aquia Creek, where the grass grows, where's the stump, where the tide, where the current seams are. All these little bitty nuanced things. Fish simple and more small. Stop trying to cover the entire lake. I even watched that this past weekend. I was at Douglas. I fished 3 tournaments on Douglas. This last time was the only time I ever never got paid at Douglas Lake. Every time I fished at Douglas, I've seen Octafo fishing at Douglas. That's his home lake. I have never seen him fish. There's a section of river up there that is probably 15, 1,000 acres. I've never seen him wet a line out from under that 1,000 acres. He fishes small. He fishes simple. Yeah, he always top tens there. Number 3, when you're fishing small, you're fishing simple. If you want to be more competitive in tournaments, you got to believe your spots and your lures and what you found is the best stuff that exists on the lake. You're fishing a tournament, you have to believe that pattern and that technique is the best thing on the lake. I heard Gerald Swindle say this about Kevin Van Dam one time. I never will forget it. And this goes back to what I was talking about listening to people that you view as successful. He told me that Van Dam never found anything more special than anybody else. He never had any lures better than anybody else. But when he found something, he fished that like it was the winning spot. Now, if you've ever even won, even just like a club tournament, put yourself in that mind process that how you feel and how you think when you're on that day. Kevin Van Dam fishes spots that aren't that good like they're really good. That's what Gerald was saying. He believed in his spot and what he found was really good. Watch this if you fish tournaments, and it might be just me. Y'all let me know. When you fish a tournament, it's wild how a lot of times when you find a bite, well, it's just this you get this mindset that my bite is just this little bite, but what everybody else found is better. You make statements like, The boys that figure out how to catch them offshore are gonna be the ones that win this tournament. The boys that figure out how to catch them on forward facing are gonna be the ones that win this. The things that everybody else found is better than what you found. You gotta believe that what you found, that spot that you found, you gotta believe that that's the best one. You fish it differently. You fish it differently when you believe that your spot is the best spot. That's how you do. And when I think about all the tournaments that I did better, that I did really well in, it was never a bait. It was never a technique. It was mostly mental, my mental approach to it. And so, Caleb, um, think about all these things that I just said here. Believe that your stuff that you find is the best. Go figure out how to get more bites. I don't know what that looks like for you because I don't know where you're fishing. It don't matter where you're fishing. That's what you're gonna go and practice and learn how to do. Go figure out how to get more bites. I guarantee you, if you start getting more bites for these next 3 months, your results will increase. I don't see a world that exists where it won't. Money back guarantee. Whatever you pay me today, I'll give you your money back if you don't figure out how to catch more fish and you still end up not being quote unquote competitive. All right. Okay. Last thoughts. Did we have any questions?
The only question that I've seen is how long do you stay on a spot before you move
Oh
on
yeah.
to the next creek?
All right. So who was that? I want to know. I hope maybe new to the
Davis
app.
Dodson.
Oh yeah, Davis. Davis fairly new. So Davis, there's no answer to that question. How long you stay on the spot? If you're starting to ask yourself if you need to move or it's time to go, you already lost confidence in that area. You know what I'm saying? You don't like it. There's no 10 minutes, 12 minutes, 15 minutes. There ain't none. Leave it. Go somewhere else. You can always go back. There's no time period. There's no 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 day, whatever. If you're starting to ask you a question, should I move? Go. Go. Leave. Do something else. That question is revealing that you lost confidence in where you are. So leave. Go do something else. There is no, and some if somebody tells you, I stay in spots 10 minutes. Ah, that there's no answer to that question. That question has a lot to do with what we just talked about. The mental approach to fishing. You lost confidence in that area, which is not a problem. The reason that you're asking, I don't know anybody that has wondered whether how long they should be fishing at a spot that's catching fish. You only think about that when you ain't catching nothing. If I'm setting the hook, if I'm catching fish, and I got confidence where I'm at, I ain't worried about. I don't care what time. I don't even care what day it is. They be like, man, you got to go home and go work. I don't care, bro. I'm catching bass, good buddy. You don't care. But when you ain't catching nothing, questions creep in. So that question that you just asked is revealing that place sucks every single time. There's not one single time that I've ever questioned how long I was on the spot unless I wasn't catching fish. So that means there ain't nothing there. Move, go somewhere else, go do something else. Your brain is trying to tell you that, but your conscience is fighting it. Conscience is fighting it. Because why would you stay? Like, why would you stay? You got a boat for a reason. That's the whole reason you got a boat is to move around. I don't care if it's a kayak, a canoe, a piece of plywood, or a bass boat. The whole reason you got a boat was to go from spot to spot. Whoop, whoop. Pick it up and go. Put that kayak in forward. We y'all kicking, kick it and go to the next spot. Just move, man. All right. Um, Last couple things here. Online tournament. If you're in the app, you just get there. Ain't no sign up registration. Am I thinking right, Michael? All you gotta do is go to that little button at the bottom. All your rules are there. How you submit it. You're just gonna create one post on the community section. There's a tab. I'm gonna go to it now. Let's see, where is it at
It's also
here?
on the menu. If you're on a website, on a browser, it's in the menu on the website as well.
Perfect.
The Bass
If you go
Challenge.
you go to SUF, if you go to the community tab, click on click right there at the top left, SUF Bass Challenge. You're gonna submit a photo and keep it under one thread so we can score in one thread. The biggest smallmouth, biggest largemouth, biggest spotted bass from May 16th through May 24th. All right. Very simple.
So, do we get to publicly shame people that post in the wrong channel? Like if they posted an Ask B Lad or the SUF channel,
Yeah.
do we get to like publicly shame them?
Yeah. Yeah. We will be post your pictures on Reddit
Okay.
and Twitter and Facebook. You big dummy. That's what it's going to say on there. You big dummy. All the rules are clearly posted right there on Bass Challenge. Look at the bottom of your app, the bottom right hand corner. You'll see all the. Just click on that. It'll take you right to where you need. All right. Um, so yeah, that's our actionable fun thing that we're going to do for the month of May. June, we're going to work on competition workshop retreat, whatever we want to call that. I'll come up with a name with it and get you more details on that here in the future. All right, guys, y'all have a good rest of your night. I'll see
Hey,
y'all in the next
real quick, I saw
Friday.
one question. The code, because we are doing a code in the photos,
Yeah.
right?
Yep,
And we're gonna
code in
put
the
that out
yeah. We'll get
sometime
that.
in the next few days.
Yeah, we'll get a code. We'll get a code for you for the. We'll post it in that thread on the community section and pin it. Probably be the best thing to do. But you don't have to worry about that yet because the tournament's not live. You worry about that on the 16th. All right. Great live tonight, guys. Thanks for the questions. I'll catch up with y'all Friday. See you later.